Welcome back. By now you are probably ready to have your players make some real money. But before we start with that, let's take a look at the rules and procedures that the banker will have to explain to all the players before the start of the game. Now, in the game, everything refers back to money. There are certain values to certain aspects that we cannot add in the game, and these are referred back to as money as well. Certain aspects will look a little bit, if we can say, off balance because of the duration of the game, because of the difference in the rounds that we play, but that is how everything works out. Also important to note to the players that this is just a game and that in real life things will be a bit different and that they have to consult with somebody before doing anything. Now, let's look at each player's goals. When we start, we need to keep the end in mind. We have to have a place where we are heading towards, which is our goals. In the Moneywise game, you are playing against yourself or your own goals, which you have to note before the game starts. Now, players will tell you, well, we don't know how this works or that works, how the money factor is, what we can buy, what we can do. Tell the players to write down what they want to achieve. This can be amended during the course of the game, but it is important to have a goal or an aiming point and a plan to get there. So have them write down what they want, and later on they can refer back to that. For example, let's look at our goals, which can be found at the bottom of our Moneywise monthly income sheet. Now, in the game, you need a goal and a strategy to get there. As we have said, you can write in anything. So let's just, for an example, we say we want to have a business and 2 properties. You can also note that you want to be married and have 2 children. So you can also write down a strategy as to how to get there. Let's take a look at the rounds in the game. Each year contains 4 rounds, which are basically a quarter, but these quarters will be played as if they are a single month. So we will have 4 months or 4 rounds then in a year, and that will define our salary paying points after the end of each round. We will have year 1, round A, B, C, and D. Moving on to year 2, A, 2B, 2C, and 2D, and so forth. It is the responsibility of the banker to inform the players in which round they are at the beginning of each round. This is important because everything bought will have to be noted when it was bought, so that appreciation or depreciation on that specific asset or liability can be worked out at a later stage. Here we can see our rounds and years as seen at the bottom of the Moneywise career sheet. We have year 1, A, B, C, D. Players can tick them off as we go along. 1A finished, 1B finished, and so forth. So here's how we're going to start. Each player for the first round, year 1A, will receive $30,000. Now this will be played as from a point where you have just finished school and need to go and study or choose a career. This $30,000 can be seen as a gift, compliments your dad, and we will start working from there. With this $30,000, each player will have to accomplish 3 things. Firstly, you will need to get a career. Secondly, you will need to get a mode of transport. And thirdly, you will need housing. It is important to understand that during the course of the game, each player has to have those 3 components in place at all times. You are not allowed to go without transport. During the game, there is nothing incorporated such as buses or public transport. You have to have your own transport, your own housing, and a career. Before each player picks his career, house, and mode of transport, he will need to refer back to the player's guide, as we have previously referenced to. The player's guide will have all the information in regarding how transport, housing, and the career works. It is important that the player plans ahead and sees that he will achieve his goals. So to have a plan, what we will do first, second, and third, so as to just get an idea for himself on how he will proceed. Now, next, let's take a practical look at how we will buy a house, vehicle, and career. We have now received our $30,000 and we'd like to get our housing, transport, and a career sorted. Let's take a look at how the paperwork will look. We have our Moneywise cash flow sheet. As noted, this is where all our transactions take place. So we will note the 30,000 is our first transaction or our first monthly income. The date is 1A. The transaction is income or whatever you want to donate it that you will remember. The amount is 30,000 and our balance is 30,000. As we can see our balance. Now firstly we want to select a career. The player by this time should have gone through the player guide to decide what their strategy is and how to get there and so forth. But let's take a look at how to choose a career. We have decided, just for example, for this specific example, that we will be the mechanic. We can see the mechanic is here on number 8, a career fee of 12,000, which is what we said we will have to pay to get that specific career. Again, we refer back to our cash flow sheet. In round 1A, we have bought a career, which is mechanic. Let's just make a note. And that career we said is going to cost us 12,000. Our remaining balance now is 18,000. You can use your calculator just for this amount. This is a minus, just for example. Now, our card we said we will get from the banker. So we have asked the banker, we've told him we want the mechanic, he said it's available, we bought it, and we have now taken the career card for the mechanic, which goes on our life chart just to show what we have and where we are. Now we have our career sorted. We now proceed to look at our transport. We look at our Moneywise career sheet. Down below we see transport. As we are not married, we are single, we have decided to use the motorbike. That might seem a bit inconvenient, but due to the price we've decided to go with the bike anyways. The bike will cost us 10,000. We refer back to our cash flow sheet. In round 1A, we have bought a motorcycle, which has cost us an amount of 10,000. And the remaining balance we now have is 18 minus 10, which is 8,000. Running a bit low on capital there, but we are almost finished. Now we want to write in motorcycle on our life chart. We can see by transport that we can write it in. We note firstly the round, 1A, motorcycle, and the amount that we bought it for, which was 10,000. And there we can see we have our transport sorted. Now for our transport, we can also look at insurance. If we just look at the insurance block, we can see that we can take out insurance. This is at the discretion of the player and is not necessary to tell them. They have to decide, read up on it, and take insurance. We will not look at insurance now, but you can just have a look in the player or banker's guide. Let's proceed to housing. Again, on the Moneywise career sheet, just next to transport, we find our housing. As we are single, we will go for the cheapest option, which is to rent a bachelor for 1,500. We now proceed again to our cash flow sheet and we write it in. At 1A, we are paying rent for the amount of 1,500. Our balance now is 6,500, which we can see there. Housing, we don't have to put housing on our life chart. We can make a note that we are renting, but as we do not own the house, it is not a crisis to put it on the life chart. Just a quick mention on careers. If we look at our careers here, we can see that there are 20 careers. For a startup, players are only allowed to use careers 1 to 10, as you will not be able to afford any other careers apart from that. Other careers can later be upgraded to, and that can also be seen in the player's guide or the banker's guide. Now let's lastly look at our monthly income sheet. This will basically explain our income and expenses for the month, as to simplify our salary at the end of the month. We can see this form is divided into 4 parts, which have 4 different income blocks. The top one's more simple, where the bottom one's more complex, which include business income and property income. At the moment, we don't own any property, so we will use the top ones. Our income, we said our net income. Let's refer to the Moneywise career sheet. As we are the mechanic, we get 12,000, and our net pay would be 7,800 after the deductions of tax and living expenses. Netto salary goes in there, 7,800 per month. We are not married, so we don't have any wife or husband, no business, and no property. Thus, our total income, 7,800 from our salary. Our expenses is our housing, as we have to pay rent every month. This is a constant expense and will be noted on this chart. This is an expense of 1,500. We have no loans and no children, so our total expenses add up to 1,500. We can now see that our total income is 7,800 minus our total expenses, which is 1,500, which gives us our payout salary, which is our income deducted from our expenses, which would be 6,300. This will make it easier come payday, as you know how much income to write on your monthly cash flow sheet. We have to note though that every time anything changes in our life, that is a constant income or expense, we have to note it on this monthly income sheet. And this will have to be done a few times during the course of the game. So we can see our total income, 7,800, minus our total expenses, 1,500, gives our total payout salary of 6,300 for the next round. This will be, for example, in round 1B. Let's take our Moneywise cash flow sheet. We now write 1B income and the amount, which is then, as noted, 6,300. We add that to our current total, which gives us a total of 12,800. And so we continue. Now, important to remember that if we buy anything and we fill it in on our life chart, let's say for example we were to buy another vehicle, we will write in 1B, the round that we are currently playing in. Another important thing on the life chart to note is the sowing and giving category. Just to explain in general how that works. Let's say for example I want to give to a religious organization or a church, a charity, etc. We classify that as sowing. Once you write that in, again we will write, let's say for example 1B, we donated 700 Rand. It is important to note that this is sowing, or as can be seen on the card, is tithing. Important to note the difference between sowing and giving, or then tithing, which is sowing, and donations, which is giving, is that sowing will be just an expense on your chart. So we've noted this is sowing, but if we give money to any player, we will denote it as donations or giving. For example, we are in 1C, or could be in 4C for that matter. And we will give an amount of 1,200. This amount will actually be given, we just write in give to remember, this amount will be given to another player on the board. We will have to tell that player that we like them, and because of the way they play, we have decided to give them an amount of 1,200. This is just important to note, as later on in the game you will see that there are certain economy or business cards that reward either tithing, donations, or sowing and giving. Just remember, sowing and tithing is the same, and giving and donations is the same. And you have to be rewarded for the one that you did. So now we have seen how the players will play a round, or namely the first round. Each player has received 30,000 and has acquired housing, transport and a career. This will be round 1. At the end of round 1, the banker has to tell everybody that we are now moving into round 1B. After which, every player will receive salary. The salary can be found on the monthly income sheet, which we have just discussed. This amount is then written in on the Moneywise cash flow sheet as income for 1B. After everybody has received salary, the banker will proceed to draw to property, to economy, and to business cards, during which time the players can then respond to these cards to buy, to sell, to change, or to pay what they need to pay. And then round 1B starts. The first player will start by drawing 2 life cards and then play what he wants to do. He will do this by telling the banker what he wants to do and the rules regarding this. If the banker is happy that the player understands what will need to be done, the player can proceed on his own and the banker will move to the next player, which will then draw 2 life cards, explain to the banker. Once the banker is happy, he will move on. When everybody in that is playing, all the players have finished playing, that is the end of round 1B. Banker tells everybody we are going into 1C, draws 2 business, 2 economy and 2 property cards. Everybody pays salary and we continue. So that is the general flow of each round and rounds following on each other. Let's take a quick look at the loans. The loans are a bit non-standard as compared to real life due to the fact that we are working in the rounds and not in months as on a 12 months per year, but we're working on 4 rounds per year. Let's just take a quick look. A player can loan based on a variety of factors. We will now look only at his income. A player can loan up to half his yearly income. So for round A, B, C and D, that total income divided by 2. That is the total amount the player can loan. Now, to pay that back, the player will have to pay 25% of that amount for a basis of 8 rounds, basically 2 years. During this time, no capital will be reduced. So if a player loaned 10,000, that 10,000 will remain 10,000 until the end of 8 rounds or 2 years, at which the loan will end and it will be seen as he has paid it off. The 25% per round that he is paying is merely interest. This seems quite expensive, but the lesson learned here is that although loans can help you, loans are quite expensive. If a player wants to reduce the capital that he loaned, he can do that during any round to pay an amount over the 25%. So let's say, for example, he loaned 10,000, he will be paying 2,500 per month. If he then puts in an extra 5,000, the loan amount will reduce to 5,000, and from the next round he will be paying 25% of the 5,000, or the amount of capital left outstanding, or the loan amount then. This is basically a standard round that will be played in a game. Next, we will look at a few tips on how to get the game flowing a bit more.